by something. So we're a little after 10:15 a.m. Here we are, Water Tiger for West Babylon. But of course, for anyone else who happens to catch this live session or, the post afterwards. So here you go. Today, we're going to start a short series in these live sessions on what I refer to as Laoshi's favorites. Now, those who know Water Tiger and those who know me may be really frightened right now, because normally if it's my favorite, it's not easy. But that's okay. That's why they're my favorite, and that's why they're good for us. So today's session, little shake, just to loosen stuff up, and then we're going to do a deep dive into, in a nutshell, the reason that this is so important to everything that we do. Water Tiger focuses on very much having the movement begin from the center and expand outward, and also that natural, organic, joint-to-joint movement. So our arms don't move, our hands don't move. One of the things that we hear very often on the mat in the room, and now remotely, is I'm seeing too much arm. But we also want to feel the liquefaction of the body. So we move joint to joint. Movement from the center and the beginning of this particular exercise, the turn portion of turn and circle, which does translate then into the circle portion, can very much be related to one of these. Now, if you've seen Karate Kid 2, you've seen these before. It's a Japanese pellet drum. But this center, where the handle is our center. And note that the strings with the pellets, yeah, I know, one shorter than the other. I had a string incident. There's no tension, right? The pellets don't bounce back and forth from side to side on their own volition. The center turns and the drum is beat. It's as simple and as complicated as that. So there are a lot of things about turn and circle that we need to address, some safety concerns, some caveats, maybe some modifications, but let's start with a shake. As always, feet shoulder wide, as close to parallel as possible. I often say, the sillier you feel as you're doing this, the closer you are to doing what it is that I want to do, what I would like you to do. So really let it go. Make funny sounds. You're alone in your house. Doesn't really matter. So there's that. But notice, even that, everything is sort of moving of its own volition. I'm not standing here shaking my arms. My arms are being shook. And they're sort of following the pattern of what my body is doing. When the torso turns, the arms are flung in different directions. This is an important note. Something else that we need to consider is our structure and how the arms are held by the body. Now, one of the ways that we use to address that in this particular exercise for the second half of the circle portion of this exercise, I just have to check something. Yeah, bad Laoshi. I didn't put it in airplane mode. Because there's a tendency to hold our arms out from our shoulders. And I don't know if you can see that. I'll get a little closer. Here, I'm holding them up from my shoulders. Now they're in the structure of the body. So we want this, not this. We want the shoulder and the trap to be the last thing that rises as we do this exercise. So we enter into that with a simple image. The little infant floaty devices that they put on kids in swimming pools? Just imagine one on both wrists, one on each wrist. Not one on both wrists. That would look like this, and that would make this video very, very different. And imagine you're standing and water starts to rise. So maybe we're in a James Bond movie or an Indiana Jones movie or whatever, and we're trapped in a chamber. But the water starts to come up. The arms, the hands don't move until the water level hits the same level as the floaty device. And then what happens? The shoulders don't rise first. No, the arms start to float out and away on the surface of the water as we begin to move, as the water begins to rise. So the shoulders are still inactive because it is the water that's causing them to rise within the structure of the body. And we're all probably going to have a different height that water hits that then starts to trigger the shoulders. You want to stop at that point where the shoulders haven't really been triggered yet. And that's where we want to be. And now notice that in my physical position, from my shoulder, there's a little drop in the upper arm. The biceps and the triceps angle slightly downward. Elbow to wrist, the forearm is angled slightly up. The wrist, a little flaccid right now, which is really what it should be. So the hand and the fingertips, the five of the one, all sort of angle down. Read an essay one time, somebody was describing a physical position like this. I think it was a meditation position, was a little bit different. But it's sort of standing like a fir tree. And how if you notice a fir tree's branches will do exactly this. They drop down from the trunk. They have a midpoint where they sort of swing up. And then at the end of that branch, those final fir needles and the ends of the twigs of the branch are angled slightly down. Seems like I'm getting a lot of screen action here. So I'm going to pause for a moment, just take a look and see what people might be saying. Oh, that's not for this. Never mind. So that's the structure that we want. In both arms, we shouldn't feel like we're lifting from the shoulders. It should feel in structure. If you're in the right spot here, then you aren't really holding up your arms. Gravity and structure is holding up your arms. So that's for the small circles. Now, the thing with the movement, going back, if we will, to the pellet drum for a moment and think of that line, and the arms are the strings and the pebbles or pellets. When you turn, your arms are flung from side to side. Now, if we make this move into the realm of the second half of the exercise where we're doing the small circles and we really want joint to joint, we want this joint, this belly, to undulate up into, half of the torso, going out one direction, then up into the shoulder, upper chest and upper back, into the shoulder, into the biceps and the triceps, into the forearm, into the elbow, into the forearm, into the wrist, into the hand, into the five of the one. Then we really need to explore this moment. Now, a lot of times when I introduce this idea, I will say, I've never taken a belly dancing class. I know nothing really about belly dancing, except when somebody shares something on my personal Facebook feed that's a belly dancer, and then I see how they move. But I can imagine, at least I do imagine, that they probably start by just sort of moving this area. Now, if you let your arms hang, as you start to move in the belly and sort of undulate just within the belly, let it travel down to the legs a little bit, let it travel up, then you'll notice a couple of things. That if you make that sort of a little bit of not only vertical, but horizontal rounding in the movement, you'll start to notice that the arms and the hands start to swing in sort of a circular pattern as they hang down. And that swing is operating joint to joint, just as I described. Shoulder into the upper arm, the biceps and the triceps, into the elbow joint, into the forearm, into the wrist, into the hand, and into the five of the one. Again, from yesterday, we were talking about this. There's the one, there are the five. And that's what we want to feel, is that sense of that undulation in the center will eventually translate into our small circles. So there's that. The caveat there is, again, pay attention to the height of your shoulders. If your shoulders are really bugging you, then drop the elbows a little bit. It might become a little bit more elbow-centric, but that's okay. Downstairs, the physical caveat is about the knees. That generally when I do this exercise, when I do turn and circle, I keep my feet grounded, both when I turn and when I circle. But for some people, they have, tension in their knees or issues with their knees. And what you might want to do in that instance, I'm going to face away from you, is bring up the opposite heel. So if I'm turning to the left, I might bring up the right heel. And when I turn to the right, I might bring up the left heel. You may find once you go into the circular pattern that that's not necessary anymore, and it's just necessary for the turn pattern. And that's fine, right? If I go into I'm not going to go into the circle pattern yet because I haven't talked about it. But if I go into the circle pattern, it's a little bit more forward and back. So you may not have to bring up the opposite heel. But bringing up the opposite heel can indeed help relieve any pull, any twist that you're feeling in that trailing knee. Shoulders. Warning, 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 warning. Danger, Will Robinson. You may not be able to do the large circles because ideally those large circles are full vertical circles, all the way up, all the way down, right beside the body. That can be tough for people who have shoulder issues. So if you find yourself, ow, 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 we have choices. One, if the impingement isn't too bad, make them more medium size. So sort of more out to the side than straight up and down. And maybe that's enough for you. If it's not, the full vertical circles can be done with the elbows planted into the sides. So you're sort of like a Tyrannosaurus Rex doing arm circles, right? Not loose and away from the body, but planted into the body. So those full vertical circles that you saw me doing this would actually look like this. But notice I'm not standing still and twirling my forearms to my hands. It's the turn in the body. So if I go sideways, here are the elbow-centric circles. Here are the medium circles. And here, if you have that full range of motion, are the full size circles, vertical circles. So we have choices. I'm going to talk about that for a moment. Because this little speech about protecting your shoulders from the full vertical circles is something I talk about whenever this exercise comes up in rotation or becomes part of a short-term session for a given public client, or even when I'm introducing it on the mat or remotely in the studio classes. In one of our programs, it's actually the program at Sachem Public Library, had a student for a number of years. Her name was Kitty. And she always stood like right there in the front line. And she'd do that at the time we were doing summer sessions, Taichi in the park. She would not only participate in class, she'd come there, and this is a favorite exercise of mine, so we did it a lot in the public sessions as well. And I could see Kitty cringe every time we did turn and circle. And I would always tell her and focus on her. And it's like, Kitty, if that's bothering you, do elbow-centric circles instead of full circles. And that back and forth went on for years. I swear it was at least 4 years. And then one day in Taichi in the park, Kitty stuck her elbows in her side when we got to the full circles, and we did them. And at the end of the warm-up session, she came over. She said, Lawrence, you know what? What, Kitty? You're right. If I keep my elbows tucked in, it doesn't bother my shoulders. Do what you need to do within your own personal range of motion. Honor your range of motion. Be aware that there can always, more times than not, be a modification for what it is that we're doing. And every once in a while, we do find in some of the instances and some of the things we do in warm-ups that somebody just has to do something else while we do what it is that we have scheduled to do. So those are really the caveats for turn and circle, with that focus of the move from the center. And what this sets up when we get to the small circles, but we should also feel it in the large circles. I'm not standing here and doing this in these arm circles. I might do that for a different reason, doing arm circles. I do a lot of different arm circles. I do an Nagoski thing with straight arms and both moving together. I do a washing the windows version to heat up the shoulders. But this is turn and circle. This is a Tai Chi warm-up within the Water Tiger School lineage. So I want that joint-to-joint movement, even when I'm going to turn sideways. There's sort of an undulation. You maybe see a little bit of that undulation in that body, but you definitely should be able at this point to see the turn, and you should feel that in your own play. And then really turning up the volume of that when we get to the small circles. And notice, I'm going to turn sideways, and maybe you can catch that the hand that's closest to the camera, my left hand, is moving back and over the top, and my right hand, the hand that's farthest away from the camera, is moving forward and to the front because they're following the turn of the hips and their side of the torso. So they're not moving in conjunction. That's something else. They're moving governed by that twist and turn in the side. And find as much of that joint-to-joint movement as you can. The odd thing with the joint-to-joint movement is it's not only happening belly, turning mid-torso, turning chest and upper back, turning shoulder, turning biceps and triceps, turning elbow joint, turning forearm, turning wrist, turning hand, turning the 5 of the 1. It's not only consecutively, it's concurrently. So they're not only both turning one after another, they're also all turning together at the same time. We refer to that as a secondary way of using the image string of pearls. The traditional way is our vertical alignment, crown point of the head to the base of the pelvic bowl. The spine should hang like a string of pearls. But at Water Tiger, we also, and there are others who do this as well, but not everybody, refer to our movement as also reflecting the string of pearls. This pearl turns that pearl, turns that pearl, turns that pearl, turns that pearl. And it's that way in this exercise. And it's that way in our Tai Chi movement as well. Joint to joint as we move through the body in our Tai Chi. So that's kind of the detail. Let's get to the exercise. I'm going to set the iPhone timer because I don't have a clock in this workout space. So I have to rely on this a lot. We're going to do probably 20-second intervals, give or take. It'll take a while for the first 20 to get started. And then the transition into the big circles will take a little while as well. So feet shoulder wide, remember that cue about the other heel. Shake out. No expectation, right? If you expect pain, you'll find a way to make it happen. If you expect failure, you'll find a way to make it happen. You'll expect it to go well and begin the turn. It may go well for a while, but if something starts to screw up, then that will become a distraction because your expectation is that it's going to go well. And again, this is what the opposite heel looks like. Just let the arms wrap. No tension. They shouldn't be held out away from the body at all. As you breathe, sort of 20 seconds from the first turn, but we're going to go a little bit longer on this first one to make sure that you're not doing an old-fashioned washing machine agitator version. You're really getting that one-armed hug in front and behind. There should be an impact and a soft, flaccid hug in both sides of the body, both the front and the back. Not sides, but front and back. Now we're going to change. I'm going to plant my feet again. We're going to change. I'm not really shifting weight if my feet are planted. Our intent. Right now, my intent is for that turn at the center to fling my arms from side to side and get that little one-armed hug in front and back. Now, I want that same turn, more or less at this point, sort of a horizontal turn. to fling the arms forward and back. Right stays on the right, left stays on the left, just swinging on their sides of the body, not crossing the center line in front. You may feel a little sense of bounce in the middle of this movement, but don't make it about bouncing. That's not it. It's about the turn. And start to build up the momentum, the centrifugal force of the swing, so you can get one hand up over the top, either forward or back. And you have the big arm circles, or medium, or elbow-centric. Feel as much as you can that joint-to-joint movement here as well. Nothing's locked, shoulder stays dropped and relaxed. And find a bounce, boom, to change direction. If you're going forward with me, now you're going back. If you're going backward before, now you're going forward. With these big arm circles. But note all of the body movement here, right? I'm not doing this. What's Lawrence doing? I got to do what Lawrence is doing. No, move in your body. A little over those 20 seconds. So imagine, if you will, longest finger of both hands, even in this version, tracing a circle beside the body. And your writing surface sort of starts to go out away from you. So that longest finger is still tracing that circle out to the side. Joint to joint, an undulation through the body that is also the turn of a circle. Change direction there, find that bounce. That was longer than 20 seconds, but you probably know that. Like, when's he going to stop talking and change direction? Because, damn, I want this to be over. Breathing, relaxing, and releasing, moving joint to joint. Now open it up. And shake that out. So there it is. Not done yet, but there it is. Turn and circle. That joint to joint movement is so important through the body, out to the end of the arm. So as you're doing that turn, your arm should actually sort of appear and sort of feel like a wave going through the body, joint to joint. And if you think we're solid, we're not. As has been said, we're ugly bags of mostly water. You want to drill down into the body as much as possible, find as many joints as possible. I kept talking about the big physical joints. You know, the belly moving up. I'll do this side just for difference. Up into the mid-torso. The mid-torso undulating, turning, rotating up into the shoulder, up into the chest and the upper back, into the shoulder then, and the shoulder into the upper arm. So we have the shoulder joint, which is, you know, quite recognizable. We have that big block of bone that holds the biceps and the triceps, the elbow joint, which again, very recognizable. The big section of forearm to the wrist into the hand, and the hand into the 5 of the 1. But as we often talk about here in the room, on the mat, remotely, Facebook Live, wherever, we have more joints than that. Every place 2 muscles come together, that's a joint. Everywhere where the muscle touches any other kind of flesh, that's a joint. Where the flesh touches the skin, that's a joint. And on the micro level, where a cell touches a cell, that's a joint. So we want to liquefy the body. So the movement is more than just the big physical joints about which we are usually aware, and get down deeper into the body to liquefy and move more and more like water. And if you really, really, really want to blow your mind, keep a little bit of mindfulness in the phalanges, because the thumb doesn't, because it just has the proximal and the distal, right? Phalanges. But all the fingers have that first knuckle, the proximal phalanges, the second knuckle, the intermediate phalanges, the third knuckle, and the distal phalanges. So in all reality, as you're doing your turn in circle, and the small circles especially, you may start to feel how the first knuckle represents your shoulder in your arm. Your proximal phalange represents your upper arm. The second knuckle represents your elbow joint. The second section of the finger, or the intermediate phalanges, represent your forearm. The third knuckle represents your wrist, and the distal phalange represents your hand and fingers. So you can start to feel that rotation and the joint-to-joint movement, not only shoulder, upper arm, elbow joint, forearm, wrist, hand, but joint-to-joint in the fingers and the thumb, although it only has the two, rotating as well. It's a lot of detail. It's a lot of mindfulness. And it's nothing that we can make happen. We need to get out of our own way and allow it to happen. Water flows. It doesn't have to think about how it is flowing. But one last time, turn portion, loose and relaxed. Wrapping that one-armed hug. I can't tell you how many times we do this in a class or something like that, right? Let them fling. They should be, in the beginning of that exercise, completely flaccid. And then the circle. This is fine. Elbowcentric. Medium. I actually find the medium tougher than the full or the elbow. Full. Something I didn't mention as we're doing the actual exercise, don't stop down here. It's not one at a time. The one down there doesn't hesitate and then take off. It swings through and continues in both directions. The big circles, 15, 20 seconds. If you can do them, but 15 or 20 that I usually hold people to in a class situation is too much, do 10. And then eventually, as things start to relax and open, you'll find that you'll be able to go longer. And you may start with elbow-centric and then say, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing Tai Chi for a while. I've been doing Qigong for a while. I've been, doing some other stretches because I know that I have an issue with flexibility. I'm going to give medium size to say, oh, wow, hey, I can do that now. And then you do that for a while and you feel things even, loosen up more. You've been doing more stretching. You've been doing more Tai Chi. You've been doing more Qigong. And it's like, I know, 6 months ago, 6 years ago, I couldn't do full circles. Let's get, oh, wow. I wonder how that happened. Be careful. Judge for yourself. Stop as soon as there's, pain. Don't strain. And then from the big circles, remember, it's joint to joint, and you still have that nice turn and undulation in the body. And I am not moving my arms. My arms are being moved joint to joint because the movement is blossoming, expanding, turning from the center out to the ends of the hands. It's so important. Getting that movement from the center, having that movement unfold organically through the body, having the movement manifest joint to joint, as small as we can consider those joints, so we can move more and more like water and flow like water in our movement, adapting to whatever container. That container can be parting the wild horse's mane. That container can be repulse the monkey. That container can be the 4 postures of grasp sparrow's tail, ward off, roll back, press, and push. Did a little record stutter there. But joint to joint movement, connected to, manifested from the center. So that's really it. Turn and circle. A favorite because it encompasses so much. I have been known to say in front of a classroom, when we do turn and circle, that everything that you need to understand Tai Chi movement, almost everything, can be experienced, explored with the exercise turn and circle. It's not my favorite because it's hard for people to do. It's my favorite, one of my favorites, because it is so rich with lessons in understanding everything we do. So that's it. I don't have anything else for turn and circle. I hope you enjoyed the deep drill, the deep dive into this particular exercise from the Water Tiger School lineage. And as people have been aware, if they've been in the room or on the mat with me, I tend to take something that's relatively simple, arm circles, and really tear them apart and make them more complicated than other people might. But again, I do simpler arm circle exercises for different reasons. But this is great for what we do. If I haven't already said that like 50 times in the last almost 30 minutes, or maybe we're at 30 minutes. So anyway, take care. Be safe, be aware, be calm, and be well. Wash your hands. Stay at home and flatten the curve. Let's wait until medical experts tell us that we can once again be together physically. But until then, let's be alone together. This is Laoshi Lawrence McElroy signing off. See you next week, both Monday and Tuesday, perhaps, for 2 more of Laoshi's favorites.